Hey, hey guys, did you know we're getting a video game movie? In fact, we're getting 3 video game movies, and they're all coming out soon. And it's a really big deal. Okay, so if you haven't noticed, which I don't know how you didn't notice, because honestly, there's YouTube, there's TV, honestly, there are apps that probably advertise, but we're getting 3 video game movies that'll be coming out soon. We happen to have the Warcraft movie that's going to be coming out. We happen to have the Ratchet and Clank movie that's coming out. And we happen to have Angry Birds that's coming out. Now, this is actually a really big deal if you think about this. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, yeah, no duh, it's a big deal. We all kind of get it. Video games to movies, that's like pretty cool. But no, seriously, it's actually a bigger deal than you think it is. So, first and foremost, when you have to think about video game movies, you have to think about what have been the good video game movies in the past decade. And no, you don't get to include Wreck-It Ralph. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but it's more of an entire story that has its own thing going on, and it just happens to take on the video game aesthetic. I love it, but it's not a video game movie. And no, Pixels is not a video game movie. Adam Sandler, I hate you sometimes. I really do. So, quite frankly, I think the last video game movie we probably had was either a Tekken movie or maybe a Mortal Kombat short film, but clearly they weren't big enough to get into the light of day. So right now we have 3 video game movies that are coming out. And the probably biggest reason as to why it's actually why I want you to acknowledge that it's a big deal is because these movies, depending on how they do, will probably determine a lot of futures of video game movies afterwards. So, you have the Warcraft movie, which has a lot of invested behind it, because you already know that Warcraft and World of Warcraft is already a really big thing. It's basically like the mother of all MMOs. So, that movie happened to have a lot of characters, a lot of story, and a lot of things. And quite frankly, it teaches people that it's a lot you have to translate into a movie format. Not to mention, it's trying to figure out how to transfer one medium of entire story into another. And video games, as we know, haven't been exactly be doing a great job of making that transition. And this one happens to be a big budget. So, you know what happens whenever a big budget movie that's kind of experimental flops? People get scared. And in case you haven't noticed, or if you haven't heard, there are actually a few films that were video game movie adaptations that are already kind of in development hell. For example, you have the Assassin's Creed that's in development hell, you have the Uncharted series that's in development hell, that would have been a great movie, and you have The Last of Us. And quite frankly, these are actually pretty decent choices to transition into a film, but they're in development hell because, well, there's a lot of fear of what could happen if you mess this up. So, why would the other 2 video games happen to have a big influence? Well, primarily because you have 3 different kinds of regions of video games. You have a very thorough, serious film, like you could probably transfer them into a film. You happen to have Ratchet and Clank, which is almost a very literal transition, which is actually basically just restarting the series from the ground up and making a video game to come out with it, which is having a film. And you have the Angry Birds film, which is basically an app game going into a movie. So you have 3 different depictions of video games that are now transferring to a film form, and these are all very experimental. Like, don't cut it short, it really is. And if these movies flop, or even if they're basically just kind of a slow burn and don't really do anything, that makes people afraid to want to try anything more experimental. And the thing about video game films that people have to realize is that you kind of have to figure out how to capture the idea of it. Now, I already told you why if World of Warcraft or the Warcraft film falls, that could basically damage a lot of other video game movies that'll come out. But what about the Ratchet and Clank series? Well, this movie seems to be one that might be directed towards kids, but could be a little bit more family friendly towards everyone. And anyone who's grown up with the series kinda already has an idea of what Ratchet is like, or what Clank is like. And thus far, they decided to just be a complete CG transition, which is actually a pretty decent idea. See, if this movie does well, it basically kind of lets people know another way they can do a video game to movie transition. This means that they could try things like maybe even Mario again, and maybe just keep it CG, just stay to that character. Maybe they could even do, I don't know, let's say Crash Bandicoot or an entire bunch of other characters. Another depiction of how they can do a video game movie. And if this does well, even if Warcraft falls, we happen to have another idea of what we can do. And then you happen to have the Angry Birds series, which a lot of people are kind of groaning over, like, Angry Birds is becoming a movie. And I'll admit, I definitely had my prejudice against it, because Angry Birds is basically nothing more than just a retextured Castle Crashers, and that's kind of annoying. But, it still doesn't change the fact that this is them finding some way to basically turn something into a movie. Finding an untapped place that we can transform into a new series. And we've seen what happens when people like to be experimental. I mean, we've seen comics transfer into the screen. And that one basically took a lot of effort to really make their decent transfer, because quite frankly, they've literally been doing this for like 40, 50 years of trying. I mean, like comic to TV series, comic to TV to the screen, and we've had a lot of bad ones. So it's understandable that video games are going to take their time to really make the transition, but it's all the more important to try and make these tiny bits of success that can actually show that, yeah, we can do this. It's just a matter of how we do it. So, in many ways, I'd like you guys to kind of acknowledge and just maybe go and try and support these films, just for so they have a way to actually see that there are different kinds of films that you can do, and you have an entire new genre of film you can basically create, and it kind of gives you like the stepping stones of what you can, put forward, what kind of steps you can do to make a decent film, how to go about it, what's too much to bite off, what's too little, what's the real good, you know, adaptation. And it also kind of gives them a decent idea of what games might be better as an option. Um, so I guess at another point in time, I'll create an entire video explaining what I think would be a great means of figuring out what's a video game that'll do a great transition from video game to movie. But yeah, just kind of keep these in line or keep these ideas there. I don't know, blah blah blah. See what people think. I don't know. Discuss things. Talk about things. Judge me if you have to, I guess. Eh, whatever.